Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a continuation of our video series that we have titled Muhammad, an Arabian prophet or a Jewish character or leader. With us here to continue our discussion along these lines is our dear friend and brother Mel. Mel, so you have covered a number of titles, if you wish, given some Jewish backgrounds behind those titles. And now we're going to talk about the possibility that there is a connection between the claim that Muhammad came in the 7th century and the Jews expecting a Messiah in the 7th century. Could you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, it seems like a massive coincidence that exactly at the same time as Islam claims there was an Arabian prophet who got a revelation, Jews believed that they had their Messiah that they'd been waiting for centuries. So it seems a massive coincidence. So we have got 7th century sources, contemporary sources that directly identify who the Jews believed was their Messiah in the early 7th century. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So without further ado, where I've got this information is from a book by David C. Mitchell called Messiah bin Joseph. And what he suggests is that the Jewish people had a double Messiah idea. One Messiah was called Messiah bin Joseph, and the second one was going to be called Messiah bin David. And according to Jewish eschatology, before Messiah bin David comes, there would first be that Messiah bin Joseph, who would gather the Jews in Israel, but would be a suffering servant who would be ultimately killed, and by doing so, atone for Israel. I'm sure Christians who are watching this will immediately identify that suffering servant with Jesus. But we have to bear in mind that Jews don't accept Jesus as the Messiah. So obviously, when they're looking at the text in the Old Testament about the suffering servant, the Jews need to find an explanation for that. So what they've gone for is not just one Messiah, but two separate Messiahs with a separate role for each one. And as soon as that suffering Messiah was killed, they expected that there would be a follow-up Messiah, which we call Messiah bin David. So that's essentially the backdrop to it. And this Messiah bin David was expected to be a triumphant king that would destroy Israel's enemies and would basically atone for the martyrdom of the previous Messiah. So we've got 4 texts. They are referred to as number 1, the Midrash Otot HaMashiach, or the Signs of the Messiah. This was probably written between 617, the year of Ben Hushiel's death, and 638, the year of the Arab conquest of Jerusalem. So this is a direct quote from this Jewish writing. Messiah bin Joseph will appear, and his name is Nehemiah bin Huziel, and with him the tribe of Ephraim, Manasseh, and Benjamin, and some of the sons of Gad. Now, you note that it's writing after Nehemiah bin Huziel has already been killed, but it's backdating it and turning it into a prophecy to make it more sort of meaningful.
Right.
We also have the second example, the Midrash of the 10 signs, again written in a similar time frame. And in the 6th sign, it says, the Holy One, blessed be he, will produce at this time Messiah bin Joseph, whose name is Nehemiah bin Huziel. Okay. Why is this significant? Because if you note the year that Nehemiah bin Huziel died, it was 617. So according to the standard Islamic narrative, Muhammad receives his revelation in 610,
Correct.
and then all of the things that happen go all the way to about 632. So you can see that this is in the right time frame. It's slightly different, but it's essentially embedded in the same time frame as Muhammad's one. Okay. Now the third one is called in English the Great Palaces, and in sections 38 to 40, you have the following. 40 years before Messiah bin David comes, whose name is Menachem bin Amiel, will come Nehemiah bin Huziel, a man of Ephraim bin Joseph, and he will stand forth in Jerusalem and cause all Israel to gather to him there. Nehemiah bin Huziel became governor of Jerusalem in 614, so therefore this writer expects Messiah bin David in 654 AD. So you can see clearly they're expecting their second Messiah to come in the same century. So we got two distinct Messiahs. And if we think back to a previous series that I've done on this channel, you'll know that Jewish people did use the term Mahmed as an alternative word for their Messiah. So I would suggest that it's likely that what happened is what started off as a story around their expectations about a Jewish exilarch who's killed being the Messiah gradually morphed into a completely different figure, the Muhammad of the Hijaz, much later. With that, we can at least give some explanation for where Islam got its story from. It didn't just invent it out of thin air. It started with something historical, and then it just kept changing until it became unrecognizable. Now, if we look to 654, we know that Bostanai, his reign, Bostanai is another Jewish exilarch, his reign falls in that time frame. And he is noted as the first exilarch under the Arab rule. So it could be that the Jews were expecting that this Bostanai was the Messiah bin David, whether they were satisfied with him and thought he lived up to it or not is probably an open question. But when he came along, they probably thought, okay, this is the Messiah that the previous text that we saw is looking forward to. And then we also have the fourth source, which is the book of Zerubbabel, again written in a similar time frame. Who is this Zerubbabel that the book is referring to? Zerubbabel was the actual second exilarch ever, who built the second temple around 516 BC, following the return of the Jews from the Babylonian exile. It was later enlarged and renovated by the Hasmoneans and Herod the Great.
Right.
So
we read about him in the Old Testament. Yeah. So
the reason why they're calling this book the book of Zerubbabel is they're projecting their understanding of the current Messiah back on him, and they basically have him receiving a message from an angel prophesying the coming of the Messiah in the 7th century. So it's a literary device. They're projecting back in time, and they're saying that Zerubbabel, the second exilarch, received this message from an angel. Sounds very similar, doesn't it, to a story of a man in a desert receiving a revelation from an angel as well.
That's right, yeah.
So in the text, it says, the Midrash, this is a further explanation. The Midrash takes the form of a prophetic vision revealed to the biblical figure Zerubbabel bin Shealtiel, the second Babylonian exilarch, who in rabbinic thought is the same person as biblical Nehemiah, the governor of Jerusalem. Since this biblical exilarch governor, Zerubbabel Nehemiah, was the ancestor of the exilarch governor Nehemiah bin Huziel, the meaning of the work becomes clear. The writer wishes his contemporaries to believe that the one who built the second temple foresaw his descendants, the sons of Huziel, building the third temple. So the purpose of this book is to say, not only have we got the Messiah, but now is the time to rebuild the temple, the third temple for the Jews. And we actually see contemporary evidence of the Jews going to the Temple Mount and starting to build a place of prayer. And then later, according to the Islamic story, Umar comes to Jerusalem and kicks the Jews out and basically says, we'll have that building, thank you very much. And that's the end of that one. So that seems to be the backdrop. Now, Mitchell says that the statement that Israel's salvation will come after 990 years from the founding of the Second Temple suggests that the author hoped for deliverance around 638 AD, which is kind of huge because that's when the Arabs reconquered Jerusalem. So it fitted in nicely with their prophecy, which was written just literally a few years before that. In it, it predicts that Armilus, that is Heraclius, will reign for 7 years and hopes for deliverance thereafter. It's likely that he is writing the mid-630s. Now, it could be that they hit it lucky. They expected that that Jerusalem would be conquered afresh in 638, and it did happen in 638. So I can imagine that would have only strengthened their messianic belief at that time.
That's right.
So if we look at two key figures, some of those texts are suggesting that Messiah bin David is someone like Bostonay, much later, but probably initially they expected the second Messiah to come straight after Messiah bin Joseph rather than 40 years later. So if that were true, what we have then is Nehemiah bin Huziel, who's the exilarch that got killed in 617. And then he was followed by Shalom, who is bin Huziel as well, his brother, who became the next exilarch. And that's interesting because according to one Jewish scholar, he proposes that Salman al-Farsi is one and the same person as this Jewish exilarch. So that's where it gets really interesting. So now we're getting closer to understanding where the standard Islamic narrative is pulling their story from, obviously with a lot of distortions. The same source says that he said to me, Messiah bin Joseph, gather all Israel as one man, and they will remain 4 years in Jerusalem and will offer sacrifices, which matches up with Nehemiah bin Huziel's reign. It says all the nations of the world will encamp behind the evil Satan Armilus, which is proposed as Heraclius, except Israel. All Israel will mourn Nehemiah bin Huziel, who was slain. His corpse will be thrown before the gate of Jerusalem, but the beasts and the birds will not touch it, according to that book. It also introduces the expectation of the Messiah bin David. And he said to me, Menahem bin Amiel will come suddenly in the month of Nisan and stand on the valley of Arbel, and all the sages of Israel will go out to him. And bin Amiel will say to them, I am the Messiah, whom the Lord has sent to announce good news to you, and to save you from the hand of your enemies. So you can see that this Jewish text is saying that Nehemiah bin Huziel is the first Messiah, Messiah bin Joseph, and also there's another one who is going to be called Messiah bin David, right, who's given this coded name Menahem bin Amiel, which again probably has some significant Jewish meaning. It's a coded name. So I think all of these four Jewish writings confirm the idea that there was a belief among Jews in a chain of messiahs or Mahmeds in the 7th century.
Right.
So
that's wonderful, because next time I think we are going to take a deep dive into Salman al-Farsi as his connection with the Jewish exilarch versus the Islamic explanation of who Salman al-Farsi might have been. As always, thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again next time. This is Fadi. God bless. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. And ring the bell so you will be notified when we release new content. Our mission is to reach Muslims with the gospel of Jesus Christ and help Christians engage with their Muslim neighbors. If you want to join us in this life-changing work, please support us on patreon.com/CIRA International, or just click on the link below.